All right, so the Misono brand overview has been long overdue on my channel. It's a brand that is probably the most popular brand in Japan. If you walk through the streets of Kappabashi in Tokyo, this brand is probably seen in 99% of the stores that I went to. Misonos, lots of Misonos. Misonos down there, the 440 series, the classic series, the UX10 series. I've used them in my home on and off, I would say for the last 4 or 5 years. We'll go through each of the series now and tell you guys what I think of them. I've never posted a single video promoting perfectionstore.com, but this is my own personal e-store. Perfection Store is an authorized retailer of all the brands that we sell. Nothing is on the gray market. With every knife that you buy, you are supporting the very makers who make them. I have made it my absolute goal to be able to get a Japanese-made knife shipped anywhere in the world with as little time and headache as possible. At Perfection Store, you will not only find the best knives made by some of the best knife makers in the world, you'll also see knives made by me, as well as collabs with other creators. And again, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. All right, so the very first series they have is called the Molybdenum series, or the Standard series. And when I say entry level, just keep in mind, it's all relative. Just because it's entry level doesn't mean that it's cheap. The overall quality of these knives are quite good. When I look at fit and finish, the things that I look for are, if they have a bolster, I always look for the step between the bolster and the scales, which is the handle material. You can feel the transition between the different materials. If I run my nail between the handle scale and the bolster, if my nail stops or gets caught, that's when to me it's not a great finish. In this case though, my nail runs fairly smoothly across the top between the two materials. Western handles will have a tang that runs from the top or from the blade all the way down through the rest of the handle, and the scales get put over that. Are your nails getting caught between the transition of materials? If no, it's a fairly good sign that it's been polished properly. To me though, the areas that matter the most are the spine and the choil of the knife. Here, they're good. They're not quite sharp, but they're not rounded as I would like it. The amount of work that's required to polish the choil and the spine to a rounded profile takes a significant amount of work. At the $100 level, you're not looking at that ultra fine polish yet. You won't find anyone complaining about the shaping of the handle on the standard series. It's just not quite as comfortable, not as rounded, not as curved as the 440 series. Sharpness wise, this is a very well sharpened knife. Misonos tend to have a, I would say a 80-20 or a 70-30 grind on their cutting edge. That basically means that they're sharpened right hand biased. Ready? Yes. We tend to overanalyze the sharpening angles and the cutting bevels and all that good stuff. The sharpener is not trying to make a 70-30 edge or a 80-20 edge or a 12-degree edge. Their profiles also tend to be slightly more linear than you would find on a typical Japanese gyuto. I like that. I like the more aggressive profile of the Misonos. This is a 240mm sample. The overall height is good. I like this height a lot for this profile. My preference is a slightly more aggressive cutting profile. The next is the Misono's 440 series. And this series here is interesting. It has a very similar steel to the Molly. I call it Molly. He treated to a 57 on the standard series, and the Rockwell ratings is a 58 to 59 on the 440 series. Now the 440 series is finished, I would say definitely better than the standard series. The rivets really nicely polished, and the bolster even better polished than the standard series. I find the 440 series to have the most comfortable handle for my hands. I've got small to medium sized hands. It has really nice curvatures along the bottom corners and the bottom edges of the handle. In terms of my standards, the polishing on the spine and the choil is acceptable. Not perfect. If I had to give it a rating, I would say it's a 7 out of 10. And on the Yeah, 7 out of 10. I'm gonna be very honest here. On the Molly series, on the standard series, it's more like a 6.5 out of 10. In terms of edge sharpness, out of the box, very nicely sharpened. It's slightly better sharpened and polished than the standard series. It looks slightly more mirrored polish than the standard series. Cutting onions, speed cutting onions, celery. To me, I find that the 440 series is the easiest to use. You do feel that the 440 series feels a little bit more springy. It's not quite as hard of a steel as the UX10, which we'll get to next, but it feels more balanced. It has a slightly more nimble feel to the knife. So next is the UX10. It's a very nice knife. The difference on the UX10 is the shape. It's much more geometrically shaped. The angle's a little bit more sharper. Everything's just a little bit more aggressive in terms of how they draw the lines on this knife. The shaping of the handle, it just looks very aggressive and very almost robotic. You know, it kind of looks like a knife that Iron Man would use. If I had to like give you a visual, you are getting a nickel silver bolster. I don't know if that's actually better. Maybe it looks better. It does have a very nice, handsome, powerful look to the knife. The blade uses a steel N685 Extra. It has a higher heat treat rating of 60 Rockwell. You gain that increase in Rockwell, you gain that edge holding ability of the higher Rockwell rating, but you lose a little bit of that springiness relative to the 440. The knife performs very nicely. Cutting onions, celery, potatoes, it's a very aggressive cutting knife. It has the same profile as the other two knives. The one thing I don't love about the UX10 is the way they polished or shaped the choil. This is something that you have to experience in person with the knives side by side. Design-wise, I understand why they did it, because when you look at this knife here, you can see that the shaping of the bolster was intentionally done to kind of reflect the shaping or the angle of the choil. Visually, I can see why they did it. But in practice, when you're holding this knife, especially in a pinch grip, and your middle finger is rubbing against this part of the choil, it just doesn't feel as comfortable as it should. On the 440 series, when you are in a pinch grip, the way the choil is shaped, there's just that much more. I wouldn't say, it's probably even less than a millimeter of space there, but it gives me a slightly more comfortable hold in this pinch grip than on the UX10. There is another series called the Swedish Carbon series. The one thing that's different about that knife, even though it is the same price as the standard series, it has the heat treatment of 60 Rockwell, which is the same as the UX10. So for those who are looking for something that's a bit more aggressive, a bit more reactive than a standard stainless series, look at the Swedish Steel series. Also, a quick note though, it is by far, and I do mean by far, the most reactive steel I have used on any knives. And everything metal on that knife will form a patina. And so if you're not careful, and if the knife stays wet, if you leave that knife on the cutting board, if you walk away to tend something else, that knife will form rust probably within a half an hour, if not sooner than that. If a family member were to ask me what I would recommend, I'm not going to go and say buy the most expensive knife you can afford, because that is nonsense. The UX10 is just not the pick when it comes to everyday usage. If you're buying it because you want the best steel that Misono offers, the most modern, contemporary look, definitely the UX10. In this lineup right here, the knife that I enjoy the most is the 440 series. In terms of performance, polishing, fit and finish, 440 series to me is the knife I would get. If there are other knives that you want me to compare to any of the Misonos, let me know in the comments. I will definitely read up on that and see what I can do. I hope you have found this video helpful. If there are any questions, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video.